Hey fam, welcome to another episode of Crystal Clear Convos. I'm your host, Crystal Smith, and I'm so excited for you to join me this evening. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you go in, you like, you comment, you share all things crystal clear. So on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. You can find me at Crystal Clear Convos, all one word. You don't want to miss out on anything that we have to discuss. Today we have a very exciting topic. We're going to be talking about men and therapy. Why men hate therapy, why they don't want to go to therapy, what are some of the stigmas around therapy. And I'm so excited to have my two special guests joining me. If you don't have a pen and paper, go get a pen and paper because they are going to highlight some points that you don't want to miss. Of course, I'll make sure that you have their contact information at the end if you want to reach out. But we really just want to have a really transparent conversation around the topic of mental health, therapy, and things of that nature. So, without further ado, welcome Mr. and Mrs. Houston. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Happy
Hello,
to be here.
Crystal.
So, I want to give you all a brief background on our guests. We have Minister Jacqueline Houston. She is an ordained minister and licensed professional counselor. She has a bachelor's in accounting from Lynchburg College. She has a master's degree in Christian counseling from Oral Roberts University, and she is currently a PhD student at James Madison University. She is the CEO and clinical supervisor of Transitions Counseling, which is a private mental health agency inclusive of multi level professionals committed to a holistic view of life and the spiritual success of individuals and families. We also have as our guest Reverend Christopher Houston. He's a published author. He's a noted conference and workshop speaker, a nonprofit founder. He's a graduate of Western Carolina University and Oral Roberts University, holding a Master's of Divinity, the founder of Bridge of Life Ministries and Bridge of Life Fellowship Church. His passion leads him to reach, reconcile, and restore lives with the message of hope, unconditional love, acceptance, and forgiveness. They have been married for 25 years and have four beautiful children, and we feel so blessed and elated to have them joining us today. So let's jump right into the convo because the people want to know. Now, I wanted to call the show Why Black Men Don't Like to Go to Therapy. And Miss Houston was like, no, it's not just black men, it's men, right? So we know that mental health, behavioral health, mental health is on the rise, especially during COVID. A lot of individuals found that they needed to seek some type of counseling, or maybe they didn't feel like they needed to seek counseling, but they just felt overwhelming depression or overwhelming anxiety. A lot of people deal with antisocial disorders and things of that nature. And there's a lot of stigma surrounding that. So let's jump into the conversation of some of the stigmas and why men don't want to go to therapy. And I will let either of you start that conversation how you like.
I'll come from the clinical side, Crystal, and then let my husband be very practical. He's a male, so he could probably give us more on that. Just how do men think?
Okay.
So, what I have encountered and read on is a lot of times men don't know how to express that it is depression or it is a mental illness or they're feeling a certain kind of way. So just the mere words don't come together. So they're thinking, how can I go talk to someone if I don't know what it is? So that's one of the first barriers they'll get to is I don't know how to explain it. It comes out as anger, it comes out as aggression. It's not
Hmm.
coming out as depression.
Right.
They just know they don't feel well. So even if they go to the doctor may even misdiagnose it as okay, let's maybe you need to go work out. And you see
Hmm.
on the rise right now, more people going to the gym and working out, believing that's gonna, get those endorphins going and they'll feel better. And then they find themselves in the same pattern of feeling sad, depressed. The other thing is they may go and self-medicate. That's another thing that just may happen so that they don't feel that way any longer.
Mm-hmm.
And it does work. It's called self-medication because it does produce a change in how they're feeling, right? But it also causes other things to happen, which addictions come from.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to be just alcohol or drugs. It could be eating. It could be pornography. It could be, you know, just overworking, things like that. So just trying to identify what it is I do believe, and then my husband can tell you more practically, when they can identify what is going on and then
Mm-hmm.
nail it down to their mental health, then I do believe they may then um, ascribe to coming in for help.
And I think that's such a good point. So many times men don't know what it is. They feel like maybe it's just, oh, I'm just stressed from work, or oh, I just have a lot going on. I'm trying to balance a lot, or oh, I'm overwhelmed with debt or whatever. Those things could contribute to it, but like you said, they're not necessarily aware of the root of what's going on with their behaviors and things of that nature. Chaplain Houston?
Listen. I have to come in because what's really practical about this. You asked me on here, so we got to talk.
Yes.
So
Keep
here's
it
the
real.
thing. A lot of times, this whole before we can even get to mental health and
Mm-hmm.
dealing with what the stigma of mental health is, we have to first of all address the issue of men struggling with identity. Period.
Mm,
Mm.
Because issues of problems, any kind of problem, is akin to how they see themselves as a man. Period.
mm,
And
Okay.
so you can only do what you know to do. So if a man has not had examples of individuals who have embraced, before we even get to counseling, counsel, somebody
Mm-hmm.
speaking into their life, period, mentors, someone who has modeled good mental health or who has modeled good decision making. If you don't have that, then you're basically trying to identify who you are from whatever you can grasp from culture,
mhm,
from what you see in the media, from things of that nature. So before we can even get there, we have to understand if a person has not been introduced to counseling earlier in life or even receiving good counsel and have a perspective there that that's acceptable, then you can't expect them as an adult to embrace counsel, much less counseling.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
deep too.
So so
I
so
love.
so so
Mhm.
we often kind of demonize the process, but the reality is you can't do something you don't know to do. And
mm,
if you've not had a model, you can't reproduce something you've not seen.
That's so true. So, okay, so your point is basically finding your identity or figuring out what your identity is because so many people have not had that role model. And then so many men have had trauma in their lives that they need to release and address and things of that nature. Um, could you tell us from your standpoint, Chaplain Houston, your introduction to going to therapy or counseling, um, how it started, whether you were an advocate of it, if not, what won you over to it, and kind of how it helped you um, in your life and marriage?
I'm going to give you the very brief and quick version of it. Counseling was not something I saw, it was not something that was in my early childhood. It was something that as I um, got into the church, I realized that if I was going to be married, I needed to go to premarital counseling. That was my introduction, if you will, to counseling, which,
Okay.
believe it or not, is probably most men's first introduction if they embrace that kind of concept, because it's
Hmm.
usually, quote, acceptable
Right.
to get premarital counseling. But then I married a counselor.
Yes.
And so my wife helped me understand me warm up to the idea of counseling. So when it became necessary for me to assess myself during the marriage, I was more warmed up to the idea and did not fall victim to the stigma,
Yes.
okay, that many men fall victim to, because I had someone in my own life to explain it, to do all the
Mhm.
things that my wife just talked about previously. I had someone to introduce it to me. And so I was able to remove the stigma myself and embrace it as something, because my heart was already positioned for counsel.
Mhm.
Right.
So I was open to receiving from people.
Okay.
Most men, I'm trying to make it short, but most men, when they have markers,
Okay.
okay? And depending upon who sets those markers, whether it's culture, whether it's men who had good examples or men who were bad examples, those markers can determine when a man feels like he's a man. And once he often feels like he's a man, he doesn't entertain anybody else telling him how to do it, because he's already
Okay.
checked the box.
Check the box. So we know that there are societal stigmas out there. Like, okay, if I go to therapy, or I'll be seen as less of a man, or I'll be seen as weak, or people will think I'm crazy. People love to use that "you're crazy" type of thing. So, what was your purview on therapy and counseling? Um, and then, Mrs. Houston, how were you able to convince him or identify areas that you all needed to discuss or go to counseling for?
Um, Basically, I had to experience it to embrace it.
Okay.
And so through experience, I became more trusting. That word
Mhm.
trust, came into. I had good people that I could say, gave me a good experience.
Mhm.
That's not so with everyone. Sometimes you can get a bad therapist. There are bad
Right.
therapists out there, and that can do more damage. It can reinforce trauma. It can do all
Mm.
those different things. But
Yes.
again, my wife helped me warm up, and she can kind of give me some insight there.
Sure. For me, I mean, even we're talking about men. For me, my first experience as in therapy was in my education. We had to literally sit through groups. We had to do some one-on-ones, and feeling that being uncomfortable with your story, like
Mhm.
letting someone else into your story is the
Yeah.
hardest part of initially going is, what, and one of the stigmas for men is, what could they do for me? I mean, you
Yes.
don't tell me,
That's a
what
good
can you
point.
do for me? Despite me being in the education program, I was still like, what can you do for me? You don't know me. My story is too deep. I got too much going on. You may not be able to help. But when I got in there and I was open to the process
Mhm.
of telling my story, I understood what they had prepared as a professional connected with what I was willing to give. I always find the more you're open to the process yourself, the
Yeah.
more help you will receive.
Yeah.
So it once you get in there, that's the hardest part, to trust that, okay, this person can help me do this. So for us as a couple, we had several couples. If my husband can remember, we were falling apart. Okay, we had three kids. It was a lot going on in
Mhm.
our household.
Yeah.
And first, we had the pastors of our church. They came, but it was more of a talk about ministry or whatever. But I felt like it needed to be an intervention because I spilled some beans. Okay,
And that's real talk. Thank you. Yes. I
you
mean,
know,
a lot of people go through that.
happening, and this isn't. No, 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 no. You can ordain them if you want to. You know.
Right. Right. That's
Amen.
real though.
Can't do none of this.
So
What would he
that
do?
was a talk, but it wasn't in depth because that was not what they were there for. They had strict boundaries about how they get in the lives of other people. So that was one way. We sort of started the process, and we were like, okay, not every pastor and his wife is ready for your stuff. So we
Mm-hmm.
found that one out. But then we had a great seasoned couple that were taking care of our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going through another little rough patch.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't ask them to come over or nothing. They said, we coming. We coming over to your house.
Good.
And they sat down with us, and I think I must have been crying that day or something with picking up the kids. It was it was a mess. And they came over and they talked to us, and they were really encouraging us to be patient with each other. Like, we had 3 kids, we had 2 full-time jobs. They were helping us. I'm getting a little teary now. Um, they were helping us, like literally doing my daughter's hair, and making sure the kids were fed before we came and picked them up. They were doing their part. They were our community. And
Mm-hmm.
we had to acknowledge that we weren't in it by ourselves. And
Yeah.
that became what we thrived on, is we've got to let people in.
Yeah.
I know it's not about marriage. I'm all teary. Oh my goodness. Um,
Because it's
but
real, and so many people have either been there or are there now.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
We the first step to getting better, even as with a wound, is exposure.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to take the gunk out, and the only way to take the gunk out, get it out, is through exposure, and
Yeah.
in a safe place, a safe, sterile place, and that's with safe, sterile people,
Yeah.
people who intend to do you well. So that's how we got introduced to us going to
Mm-hmm.
counseling, and then we went to a professional counselor because, again, we were in ministry.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
We built a ministry from the ground up. And I was like, man, if we add one more thing to our plate, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And I was like, we need to go and see somebody, because when I'm talking to you, I don't know if you're hearing me.
Okay.
And I'm sure the more he wanted to do, I think and he can speak for this on his own. Maybe I wasn't hearing God, right? So
Right.
it was that clash of, okay, we're in transition. Where do we go? One wanted to go faster, one wanted to go slower. We needed to get on the same page. So we have been in counseling, and that's how our progression went. And even now, we pull in people that we need
Yeah.
over time. And like, hey, we gather our resources, our situational um, things come up. So we have people we talk to. So that's
And
how
that's
we
how you make it 25 years and be able to
yeah,
say,
20,
we still in
Yeah.
love, we still standing
Next
strong.
month.
Because so many people now are so quick to just throw in the towel. Y'all know I made it too, okay? So 25 years is a huge accomplishment, and being able, like you said, what you're willing to give. If you go in with the attitude of, I'm going to do this because she wants to go, or you go in and you're not putting in the work or the effort, because when you go in, you have to realize there's work that goes along to it, and you both have to be willing to be transparent and open up and be honest about what it is before you can try to work towards fixing that. Go ahead, Chaplain. You right there.
I've got to jump in on this. Watch this. Here's the thing: when you open up and you learn to become transparent with your story,
yeah.
here's what you learn: is that your story is not the first story that
Mm-mm.
ever existed.
Ever.
What you find is that others go through similar circumstances. It's the
Mm-hmm.
trick of the enemy, Crystal, to isolate you and make
Yeah.
you feel like you're the
Yes.
only one.
The only
Yeah.
one.
Okay? You're the only one going through. You're the only one who's ever had to deal with this. No, you're not. And there
Right.
are people, whether they're older than you, some may be even younger than you. But if they opened up to the process of counseling and have learned some skills, these are
Mm-hmm.
life skills.
Mhm.
Receiving criticism, giving effective criticism, receiving counsel and help,
Okay.
giving proper counseling, those are life skills.
Mhm.
And you don't just learn those, you have to work at them.
Yeah.
That's
You
right.
have to study them. You have to have models and examples. And whether you get it in a book, whether you get it in a relationship, whether you get it from a sermon or a preacher or a community of faith believers or what have you have to have some input
Stop.
for what you don't know. Here's the problem with men when it comes to this: we do not want to admit we do not know.
Mm.
Oh, that is
We
so
do not
true.
want to admit that. That's the biggest barrier, if you will, to men going to counsel, to men doing anything that's going to help expand or maximize their potential. Okay, is their resistance to others' contribution to
Mm.
their success.
Mm.
Yes,
So
that's
that's
so true. And that's such a good point. I want to be able, while we're here on this topic, as we inch towards our time, I wanted to talk briefly about pastors that think, because you all said that the first thing was like pastoral counseling, and then you all branched out and went to seek a professional to put in the additional work, and they acted as your support system in your community, which was great. And it's great to have that pastoral Christian counseling based on your beliefs and all that, but also something from a clinical standpoint. What do both of you say from both sides, from the clinical standpoint and the pastoral side, on pastors that want to think that they are qualified to address mental and behavioral health issues, and they try to cross over in that lane because they are a pastoral counsel? What I do want to insert here, church folks, is that everything is not a demon, okay? We need to address mental health, whether it's a chemical brain imbalance or whatever people are going through at the time, that everything is not a spirit, everything is not a demon, everything can't just be lay hands on them and pray for them, keep them in prayer. But give us that differentiation and how, what you would recommend to our church audience, to pastors and people that see people for counseling when it comes to mental and behavioral health.
You don't mind, I'll start and then let you kind of wrap that part up. So I learned back in seminary or Roberts University, one of the first things they taught us is that referral is a pastoral care tool in the hands of a pastor.
Say that again, sir, please.
Referral to a healthcare professional or others who are equipped to carry certain levels of ongoing therapy and treatment, okay, is a pastoral care tool and resource.
Mhm.
So it is how I express my care for you as a pastor, by ensuring that you not only have me to pray for you, that you not only have me to believe for your spiritual well-being and your soul, but I'm also going to get you soul care with the treatment that you need, because this is a holistic effort. This is a work of just not just your soul, but your spirit and your body.
Right.
Okay, and so I may even send you as a referral. Come on, to your local gym, where you've got a trainer who can help you with your health, because maybe your son is working against your health and your longevity. Okay,
And your confidence. Come on.
so Jackie could probably speak to how she's seen it be a barrier, maybe in therapy,
Mhm.
from pastors, but that's my initial intro.
Well, I
Okay.
also went to Oral Roberts University, and they were very careful to help us understand the difference between therapy and spiritual care, or
Okay.
you know, counseling, on the spiritual side, or pastoral counseling. And what they let us know is we're there to go into the deeper depths of their personal issues.
Okay.
What I caution every pastor is you shouldn't have that much time, okay, to go into the deeper depths of, when you hear someone has gone through trauma, or
Yes.
their current issue is traumatic.
Traumatic.
That's what you need to start backing up and saying, hey, I'm here for your soul care.
Mhm.
I'm here to make sure that you're covered with the word of God, with your faith. I'm going to, just help you with your faith to believe you can overcome. But there is another source or
Absolutely.
resource that helps you get into the deeper depths. What that helps a pastor do is not to be overly attached to issues or his flock in a way that will compromise him,
I like that.
Or
him or her.
information, or information.
Right. And because we've seen the abuse where they've known, pastors can know too much and then use it against that parishioner over the pulpit, that kind of thing. You want to keep a pure heart towards the parishioners.
Absolutely.
So, with having those resources available, you keep in contact with their soul care. How is your faith regarding your health? How is your faith regarding your diagnosis? How is your faith? Do we believe in God? So this is our book. Our book is the DSM, right?
Hmm.
The Diagnostic Manual.
Right. That
Their
big
book
old book.
is the Bible.
Right.
Yes,
So
indeed.
when we start going in, and as I'm also an ordained pastor, I am very careful when I am representing God in his place in his church. I don't use clinical terms.
Okay. Thank you.
That's not what they're there for. They're not there to hear, at the time I was his first lady say, I think you got anxiety.
Right.
No. If I
Right.
do, I'm using it in the context of a scripture that has be anxious for
For
nothing.
nothing. Right. That's really
Because
good. That's really good.
I need to increase your faith where you can handle it. And that's in the word of God. That's our book. So
Yes.
I have to find where they are in reference to their faith and where I can direct them, where they have the book to go to. Then
Yeah.
if I need to go outside that book, because you're experiencing a trauma right now, someone was killed yesterday. I can pray with you, I can sit with you, but I'm going to send you to a counselor who has grief techniques to take you through each and every stage of that. While I can sit
Yeah.
with you, and while I can
Right.
pray with you, and while I can soul care with you, like make sure your soul doesn't go down in the depths. I
Hmm.
can walk with you there as a pastor, but someone else needs to walk with you through the steps of your grief.
Yes.
And I think that is so good. I'm going to stick a pin there because you all have agreed to come back for our part two. And I do want to be able to put your contact information up there because somebody may see this and say, I need to talk to them right away. I need some help. We have the pastoral counseling and coaching, and then we also have a true clinician, somebody that is an expert in behavioral health and the CEO of her own company for mental health management. So, Mrs. Houston, their email can be found right here on the screen, Transitions Counseling. If you haven't done so already, please make sure that you follow all things Crystal Clear Convos on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I want to thank you both so much. We still have so many questions to unpack on why men hate to go to therapy. So make sure you all tune in for part two. We have some really valuable information and some questions that you may not have thought about. So until next week, be blessed.